So my name is Joshua Lisbon, and I work for MPG Ranch. We are a conservation organization, and we are stewarding 16,000 acres of land here in the Bitterroot Valley, just south of Missoula on the east side. It's absolutely stunning. We can turn the cameras and show you what this looks like here. But the easy way to explain us is that we own a lot of land, and we are trying to figure out how to restore that land. And we are doing all of the research necessary to do that. And then we make all of that publicly available. So part of the way we do that is through curriculum, with like what we're doing with you. We also write a lot of papers and make a lot of films and things like that. So we try to get that information out there as best we can. My role here is primarily as the education director, which means I get to do stuff like this. Give a lot of talks, build curriculum, have folks come down here, coordinate with the researchers to get people involved, all that. But I also get to study mountain lions in the winter. And so that is probably one of the coolest things that I get to do, and I absolutely love it. And it's incredibly exhausting, and my legs are actually pretty happy to not be hiking around in the woods today because they're really tired. So getting to stand here and talk to you is great. We've been studying the mountain lions for over 10 years. The project started in 2012, so that's a long time. I don't know how old all of you are, but that might be most of your lifetime. And so I've been hiking around in the woods learning about cats that whole time, and I've learned a lot. And I think one of the things that is really cool and that I kind of want to drive home with all of you is that when we started the project, we knew what we knew about mountain lions, and it was an incomplete picture and an incomplete understanding. But we didn't know that. And as the project went along, research changed. Other researchers and other people found out more about mountain lions. We saw some of the same stuff. New papers and information came out, and we had to change our understanding of how they live and how social they are and whether they share resources and how many mountain lions is too many mountain lions on any landscape. And so we've really kind of changed how we understand them. And that's because when all of this stuff started in the 1960s with Maurice Hornacher, who's like the great granddaddy of mountain lion research, the 60s was a long time ago, but not that long ago if you think about trying to study something. So like we've been studying wolves a lot longer, we've been studying other things a lot longer, and we haven't really been studying mountain lions very long. And the tools that he had then were not as good as the tools that we have now. So we can see things and observe things in ways that were not possible at that time. And so naturally, we're going to learn new stuff. And as a result, we've learned a lot of new stuff, and we've changed how we think about mountain lions. And I've learned a ton of new stuff just in the last few weeks, which has blown my mind and changed my understanding of baby mountain lions particularly, because I saw a lot of mountain lions from about 3 months moving forward, because at 3 months they're running around with mom and they're on kill sites and they're eating deer and elk, and that's when we usually start seeing them. But boy, I have been looking for 10 years and I have not found baby mountain lions. And then when 2023 started, some of my trackers in the field found week-old baby mountain lions. They were brand new. And we've been able to follow them and observe them and film them and observe mom's interactions with them. And it has really kind of reshaped my understanding of those early days of baby mountain lions. Because I thought one thing because I'd read all the research, and that was all that I had because I hadn't observed it. And then I went out into the world and I looked using that information, and I was wondering why I was not finding what I was looking for. And then we found it, and it was different than what I thought and what I'd been looking for. And now I have to change my whole understanding of how this stuff works. And then I ask a lot of questions about why. Why is it different for us here than other researchers, other places? And so what we end up with new information is a ton of questions. And we're still figuring this out because all this stuff's only about 3 weeks old right now for us. So you're here with me as I'm discovering new information and changing how I understand mountain lions.
That is so cool. All right, so let's start a little bit. So you found these baby mountain lions. So let's start a little bit with what you thought you knew, what the research that you had read, what things had studied, what videos had come out. First off, on where moms put their baby mountain lions. So give us a little bit of that information. And I'm going to share a video while you talk about that.
Yeah, so what you're seeing right now is researchers going in, like my guess, usually how this stuff works and how they get video like this is like, see how that little guy's got an ear tag? So mom has a collar and the collar tells the researchers where the den is, and the researchers tranquilize mom and put a collar on her or refit the batteries or whatever while they got her. And then they go to the den and they find the babies and they pull the babies out and they get little DNA samples and maybe put an ear tag in. And then they get their information on these babies. And so what we're seeing here is these cats, are in a rocky den, right? This rocky crevice. And everything I had read and everything I had seen led me to believe that this is what I should be looking for. And so I spent the last 10 years looking for this. And we had video on the ranch from this place we call the Mistletoe Den. It's really like kind of a bed stop-off station where we got the footage of the youngest animals we'd ever seen. And those animals were, the kittens were like maybe 2 months old at that point, moving around with mom. And those kittens were in a rocky, craggy place. And it reinforced my thought that this is what I should be looking for. And I looked for 10 years and I never once found it. And it's very frustrating. And then suddenly we found babies and they were not where we thought they were going to be. And the den was very different than we thought and very different than what we expected. And so now it changes how I'm thinking about things.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I am now going to show you what they found. And after I show you the video of what we found, I'm going to have you do a turn and talk with your class. And you are going to come up with questions you might have for Joshua or questions about research. And so when I say questions about research, research questions might be something like, well, I've learned this now, so it makes me wonder what could happen next. And it's something that you would want to look into a little bit more in depth. And so Joshua is discovering that he has all sorts of new research questions.
Right. Yeah. This discovery, which again is like only 3 weeks old. So we've got a lot of questions. We have some hypotheses. So we've got thoughts about how it can be and why it is. We don't know if they're all correct. We're trying to reason this out right now. We've got a lot of ideas. We don't know if they're all correct or not, but boy, we got a lot of questions now too. And so the video we're going to show you, I took this video with my phone, just a few weeks ago, and I was like a foot away from these little babies. So we're going to show you that right now. Look at those little babies. So we know they are about a week old, because we know that at 2 weeks old, their eyes open, and their eyes opened a week after I took this video. So these kittens are about a week old. So what you'll observe is they're very small. They're quite helpless. Their ears are locked down tight. They will stand up. And by 3 weeks, those ears are standing up and they look like cats. But their eyes are closed and they have spots. So you may think of mountain lions as being kind of like a tawny brown color, but their babies are not. And when their eyes open, they're blue.
I'm also going to make an observation that there's no rocky crags nearby.
Yeah, I'm seeing pine cones and sticks and ponderosa needles. So definitely not a rocky, craggy spot.
Okay, so I'm going to keep this up so you can watch it. I'm going to have you turn and talk to your neighbors for 1 minute and 32 seconds. And then we're going to go through each class and we'll do 2 questions or wonders for Joshua from each class, and I will call on those classes. So go ahead, turn and talk, and we'll be back in 1.5 minutes.
What about my question? Excuse me. What would happen? Why are their eyes closed? Why?
Yeah, that is something that I don't totally have an answer to. That's something you see when they're born. My guess is if you are being born somewhere with a lot of rocky debris, pointy sticks and needles, it probably makes sense for the vulnerable parts of your body to be protected until you have enough motor control to keep yourself kind of safe. So my guess would be it's a protective mechanism to keep them from getting poked in the eye, stabbed in the eye, and damaging those very vital parts of their equipment while they're too small to really do anything about it.
What an interesting research question that.
Yeah.
I like that. All right, another one from Mrs. Hart's class. Thank you.
All right, we do have another question from across the room.
That
I
didn't
just
answer
had a
my
question. How do you guys like track these baby animals and where do you find
With
them
a tracker.
generally?
All right, sorry, did you hear that? How do you track them and where
Yeah.
do you find them? We
Yes.
missed out on a little bit of the beginning because our class hasn't started yet.
Oh yeah, no worries. We're non-invasive, right? So a lot of studies will use houndsman or woman. They'll tree a cat, they'll, tranquilize them and they'll put a collar on them and then you can get your location data that way. And you can find your dens that way, right? Because you'll get a lot of pings in a certain area and you'll figure out what's going on. So you can find your dens and your kill sites that way. We don't do that. So we are hiking a lot. So we're out on the land, we're finding tracks in the snow and we're following those tracks. So, we're all putting in probably 6 miles on a short day, 10 plus miles on a longer day, hiking around the hills off trail all the time. And that's how we're following these cats, picking up hair, picking up scat for genetic analysis to know our individuals in our population. And then we're locating these kittens in the same way.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Let's go to Mrs. Felsted's class.
What gender are they?
We're wondering how you tell what gender the kittens are.
So I could potentially have picked them up and checked, but I
Oh.
didn't want to mess with them. So the genomics laboratory runs hair and scat samples. So we give them the hair and the poop, and they can pull DNA out of that. And then from that DNA, they can usually get it to an individual identification. So do it like species level first. So like, is it a mountain lion? And then individual. So we can figure out whether they're male or female and then how they're related to each other. So we collected a ton of hair out of these dens or beds that they're in. And that's at the lab right now. So they're doing like kind of a rushed version of what we give them a ton at the end of every season. And it takes a while to get it back because it's a lot of samples. But we just gave them a few because we want to know who these kittens are. And that's how we're going to figure out whether they're male or female. And if they're male, when they grow up and they leave mom, they're going to leave the territory. And if they're female, they might stay in the territory. And that's exciting for us. So we're hopeful that at least one of them survives, and we're hopeful that that one that survives is a female, because then we can continue to follow them around.
That's great. Do you have another question, Mrs. Felsted's class?
Do you have any other questions, Ronan?
What are their names? Have you named them yet?
Do they have names?
Oh man, no, not yet. And so usually with like scientific research, you don't usually name things like it goes both ways on this. Like some researchers are like, yeah, sure, whatever, name them. It's easier that way. And others are like, no, you have to go with the sample name. So when we get our samples back from the lab, they have an M or an F for male or female. And then they get a number, and the number is just whatever order that they were found in. And so we've got females out there like F2 and F27 and, all that kind of business. And so they will get that if we can get that information from them. And if we follow them long enough and they become part of a story long enough, we are also making documentary films about these mountain lions. And so we released a 90-minute film last winter that tracks 10 years of research. And the main characters in that film, we did name them because it's way easier to tell their story if they have a name. And you can tell them apart easier. It's just so much simpler. So if these kittens survive then yeah, they will eventually probably get names, but we haven't even gotten there yet. Right now, they're just like the kittens, and we only found them a few weeks ago, and so we're all abuzz with the fact that they even exist.
I wonder if maybe students could submit some name suggestions.
Yeah, and we don't know if they're male or female yet, so you know, kind of a mix of both would be great.
Yeah, so maybe if you guys want to send an email afterwards with some name suggestions, I'll pass that on.
And the mom doesn't have a name yet either.
Oh, so everybody should think about that. The documentary, there was a question, is the documentary available to the public to view?
Not yet, but coming soon, hopefully. The trailer is online and you can view that pretty easily. That's on YouTube. The documentary is called Tracking Notes: The Secret World of Mountain Lions. And so you can find the short trailer on YouTube. And other than that, it's going through the film festival circuit. So it was in Europe recently and it's showing all over the place. So we are working to get it out for streaming. And once that happens, then yeah, it'll be really easy to watch. But right now it's not that easy to watch.
We'll keep you guys
Well, yeah.
posted. All right, let's go to Mrs. Hoffman's class. Mrs. Hoffman, do you guys have a question or a wonder for Joshua?
We have a couple here. This is Louie. What do they eat?
Hi, Louie, what do they eat?
The babies are nursing. So they're nursing from their mother until about 3 months old, at which point they get weaned. And what we see at about like 2.5 months is they're on a kill site and they're kind of eating, but then they also go and nurse from mom until finally they're not nursing and they're just eating. And that happens at 3 months. And then they're eating. Mostly mom's going to be bringing them to deer or elk is what we see in our study area. So that's what they'll start eating.
Okay, Haven.
When do they start hunting?
Yeah, so mom's going to have to teach them to hunt. Mountain lions stay with their moms for on average 15 months, sometimes longer to like 24, so like 2 years, sometimes shorter, around a year, but give or take, it's around 15 months. So leading up to that, as the cats mature, the mom is going to have to teach them to hunt. And then once they hit that 15-month mark, they are on their own. And so hopefully they're pretty good at it. And it takes them a while to hone those skills to a point where they're able to take down something larger like an elk. And we don't see cats taking down larger prey until they're probably closer to about 5 years old, maybe something like that, because they're bigger then and they're more able and they've been hunting longer and they're just better at it.
Great questions. Okay, this is Hubert's class. Do you guys have some questions and wonders?
Who is the older cub?
Well, they'd all be the same age. So it'd be a matter of seconds probably, because they're all born at the same time. So I don't know.
Is there only 2 cubs?
There are 3.
Oh.
And we're noticing that one seems to be a little bit more aggressive than others. And we're wondering if that's a male in there, because they would tend to be a little more aggressive.
Why are their eyes blue when they open them?
I don't know why they start blue, but they get to be amber colored or like brown as they get older because of exposure to UV sunlight. So I think that that's just the coloration you get when they're born because their eyes are closed, and then their eyes darken as they get older.
Awesome. Okay, we'll have time for more questions in a few minutes, but we're gonna move on with discoveries that you've made and things that you're learning about.
Well, the rocky craggy business, there's an ingredient there for a lot of study areas with mountain lions that we don't have. And so that was one of the things we wondered about was, well, we're seeing a different behavior, right? So clearly these moms are not having their babies in rocky craggy places, or we'd been finding them there and we're not. So something's different. What is different in our study area that would have this different behavior than other study areas where that's what they're seeing? Should I give them the answer?
Give them the answer.
The answer is we don't have wolves. So There are wolves in the Bitterroot, but there are not, sometimes we get a couple of wolves bouncing through, but we don't have a wolf pack, a strong presence in our study area. If there were wolves in our study area, the mountain lions would get pushed to higher elevation, rockier, craggier stuff. And that would make sense that that's where they are. So that's where they'd have their babies. Also, wolves are really hard on mountain lions. So if you have a lot of cats in an area and wolves move in, they're going to go after the babies and they're going to steal a lot of the kill sites. And the cats aren't going to have as much food and they're not going to have as many babies survive. And so your cat population is going to go down. So if you're a cat living around wolves, you need to be really careful to protect those babies. So you're going to stick them in rocky, craggy places that are like really out of the way and protected and harder to find and harder to get into. And maybe your babies survive a little bit better. But our cats don't have that to contend with. And in the winter, there are no bears rumbling around either to eat your babies. So they are just having them under trees, just out there on the hillsides, which is a game changer for me because now I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been looking in the wrong places for 10 years, you know, whatever, only 10 years. And now I have a better understanding of how our cats live and they're doing things a little differently. And I'm trying to figure out why they're doing the things a little differently and how that works or doesn't work for them. And right now I'm working with a sample size of 1. I've got mom and these babies, and I'm trying to kind of create an understanding around what I'm seeing and wondering if that is more broadly applicable to the cats that live in our area, because I have not been finding these den sites in the rocky, craggy spots, and now I'm finding them under trees.
All right, I have another video that I want to share. This one actually is a different group of kittens,
Yes.
I believe. And
Also from this winter though, so this is brand new stuff. We just got this. This is another family group that we're following.
we'll start with this one, I believe.
Yeah, and so we got this footage from, they had a kill site nearby. This was on a bed / day nursery site for the kittens to be at. And so we see this transition of like the natal or birth den, which is really kind of a bed for our cats. Then we see these like bigger kind of bed areas near kill sites, or so these cats are weaned, they're 3 months old, they're eating, they're not nursing from mom anymore. So they're going to the kill sites, they're bedding with mom, and they're eating the deer and the elk. Prior to that, when they're still just nursing, they're running around with mom once they're, you know, 2.5 months old. But they're not going to eat at the kill site, and mom needs to go hunt. So she's got to put them somewhere. And we see that with these guys too. They get kind of stashed in these day nurseries, which is often also under a tree. It's soft and duffy and warmer than the surrounding areas with snow. And they kind of sort of stay put. They do a decent job of it. And then mom goes and hunts and comes back for them. And so here we had mom. Oh, I think you're at the end of that video. And here we had mom,
Okay, thank you. Here we go.
you know, using her baby as a pillow, which is pretty adorable. But moms, they're super affectionate. They're really affectionate when they're with their babies, but they also leave them alone for a long time because they have to go hunt. So it is like this double-edged sword for moms out there, because like, if you're not around your babies and they're vulnerable, something could happen. And you also have to go hunt. So you have to leave them. So then what we see is you can see spots still on these babies. So they're pretty well camouflaged. And that's what's up with the little guys. When they're really tiny, those spots are super pronounced. And then they change into their adult coloration as they get older. But yeah, the beds that we're seeing make a lot more sense with then moving that onto the day nursery, which is like basically the same thing, but bigger. And then moving on to kill sites. And often we start seeing them at this age at kill sites because it's the food resource that keeps them there.
So Joshua, one of the things that I think was interesting, one of the research questions that you were able to follow up on pretty quickly that you came up with is you saw these little teeny tiny guys, and you saw mom leave to go and hunt, to eat, to take care of herself so that she could come back and take care of her kittens. And one of the things that you wondered was,
One of the things I wondered was how do they not freeze? Like what we discovered was if mom goes away to feed or goes away to hunt, she might come back once or twice throughout the day, but she might not. She might be gone for like 12 hours, like all available daylight, she might be gone. And then she's there with the kittens, typically at night, all night, keeping them warm. It's the coldest part of the day, so that makes sense. Nursing them, grooming them, snuggling them, keeping them warm. But still, they're alone for a long period of time. How do they not freeze? They're very small. And so I was a little worried about that our presence there would maybe keep mom away for too long and they'd get cold, or, you know, I didn't know how that worked. And having cameras on them now, we're seeing like, oh, actually, the mother is gone for a long period of time. And so I was able to film them in thermal. So in this, you're seeing white is hot and black is cold. And so you're seeing heat escaping from these little babies where you'd expect: ears, eyes, face, places where there's not a lot of fur. And they are in their little snuggle pile, which helps to retain heat. They're in the duff or the pine needles under a tree, which also helps to retain heat. There's loft there and they're not in the snow. And look at their fur. They are woolly little fluffy things that apparently really retain heat well. So they, even though they're tiny, can stay warm pretty well. It helps to have a bunch of them because then they've got combined heat of 3 of them. But their coat is not letting a lot of heat out. So they have a fantastic winter coat on to keep them warm, which I was very curious about this, and I'm glad I had the ability to film them in thermal because I was worried, frankly.
well, it's a great example of how when you learn new things, it brings up brand new questions. And in this instance, you were able to put that into use to find an answer. And that's so cool.
And this whole experience has honestly created a lot more questions than answers. Like, we're trying to figure this stuff out in real time. And you're kind of along for the journey on this because we only found these babies like right after the new year. And so we have 3 weeks with them, right? So this is all very new to us. Our experience with mountain lions often picks up at about that 3-month mark and moves forward. So I've got a pretty good understanding of how everything works from that point on. But prior to that, it's been a little mysterious, and it's been based a lot in what I've read because I have less firsthand experience with it. Now I've got a bunch of firsthand experience with it, and it's changing how I think about mountain lion babies and their interactions with mom and what actually takes place out in the forests. And it creates a lot of questions.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. So it creates a lot of questions. This is your cue to turn and talk for another minute and 47 seconds, and come up with a few questions that you would like to ask Joshua. So go ahead and turn to talk to your neighbors, come up with some questions, and we'll be back. And now it's a minute and 22 seconds.
CJ,
What do the moms eat?
well,
Moms mostly eat deer and elk. That's the pretty safe answer. But you know, sometimes mountain lions will eat grouse, or bighorn sheep, or mountain goats, or whatever. They are an obligate carnivore, which means they have to eat meat. So they're going to be hunting to feed themselves. And in our study area, mostly they're going to eat deer and elk.
Tatum. Ask your question, huh?
What do they look like after a month?
Ooh, maybe
Could you
Yeah.
hear?
progression.
Yeah. So after a month, so we're like getting really close to a month. They look a lot like the video we showed you with their eyes closed and their ears down, except we're like 3.5 weeks right now. So their eyes are open. They can blink and they've got control over their eyes, which is good. So if they get crud in there, they're not in trouble. Their ears are up so they can hear more. They've got a way more body control. At like 2 weeks, they couldn't retract their claws. So it just looked like they had these like weird long nails sticking out. But now they can retract their claws. They can climb around. They've got way more body control. And that's just at like 3.5 weeks. So they look like cats, they're getting to be about the size of a house cat at this point. They still have their spots, and they will have their spots for another, well, on to like 6 to 9 months. Those spots are going to fade away into very subtle dapples until they're gone. And then they come into more of their adult coloration.
You have one behind you.
Yeah, so they're going to be, this is a cat that FWP pulled out of the population. And so this cat, like, this is the color they will be. Belly hair is very white, this like tawny brownish red color. But when they're young, they have spots. And so slowly those fade over time.
Do we have more questions or is 2 our limit?
Let's do one more question and then we'll come back at the end for one.
Drayson.
Aw.
Sorry.
What would happen if the baby ran away?
If the baby ran away.
Yeah.
So what
Yes,
we've
sir.
seen, yeah, what we've seen is when they're really small, like 1-2 weeks, they don't have a lot of body control. And if they fall out of the den, which happens, and they fall into like a pile of snow, they could freeze. And they cry a lot. So then that's going to alert predators, and something might hear that and come in and eat them. And so that could be really bad for them. Remind me of the question again?
What would happen if
Oh,
they ran away or
so-
if they were out of the?
Yeah, so running away is a bad idea for them. So they want to stay together. And now at about 3 weeks, they've got the body control to like climb back in the den and stay back in the snuggle pile. And they want to keep up with mom. But even that group that we showed you that was 3 months old, we had a camera on the kill. The trackers were coming up the hill to check that camera. There was a 7-minute lag between mom noticing somebody was coming and she just left. And the babies were left to be like, wait, what's going on? Where's mom going? Oh, I guess we should follow her. So she's not like corralling them all up like little ducklings and taking them off. She's just out of there. So they have to like be attentive to mom and follow, and that keeps them safe. They can fall behind. They can get left at dens. Things happen. They're a little clumsy. They could fall off a log. They could get injured. They could be unable to continue to move. Like, things happen, and that's how they lose kittens. So the survival rate on babies is like, mom might have 1 to 4 and 1 or 2 might live into adulthood. And so of these 3, we don't expect all 3 of them to survive. So wandering off is a really bad idea for a kitten because they're really dependent on mom.
All right, let's go to Mrs. Hebert's class. Do you guys have some questions or wonders?
I wonder if I could take a picture from a foot away.
Can you say that again, please?
I wonder if I could take a picture from a foot away.
I would not recommend it. So just to be safe, don't approach wildlife. You're gonna probably get hurt. And I have the advantage of being almost 6.5 feet tall and like 220 pounds, which it helps. I'm a big person. And so the mom is going to be a little bit more shy with me than, a kiddo. So you do not want to approach mountain lions, and you do not want to mess with babies of any creature. The moms are going to get mad, and it can create problems. This mom has been really submissive and moved away a lot, or we've come up on the den when she wasn't there. And initially we just stumbled upon this. We didn't even mean to find it. But yeah, just to be safe, don't approach wildlife and take pictures of stuff a foot away. You might get in trouble. Like if you pay attention to what happens at Yellowstone, all the tourists roll into Yellowstone and they're like, oh, bison, and they go to take pictures and they get beat up. So just good to be safe, right?
All right, do you guys have another question?
If most babies live in like the rocky dens, why don't like the babies that we just saw like live out in the open?
Right, David.
Yeah, why do they like live out in the open?
Yeah, so my going hypothesis is about the wolves. I think that the kittens that end up in the rocky dens are because there are more predators on the landscape, being the wolves, that are looking for those babies specifically. And so the moms have to take greater pains to hide them away somewhere safe. And because we don't have wolves in our study area, the moms don't have to be as vigilant in that way, and they can have their babies more. I mean, they're protected areas, like they're camouflaged and really hard to find, but it's not the same. Like they are more vulnerable in these like little spots under trees. And so if there were wolves around, they'd be in trouble. But I think because we don't have the wolves, that's why I think we're seeing this behavior. That's the best guess I've got. That's what I'm going with so far.
All right. We have another question. Nevaeh. We've got one more question.
All right.
Why don't they get hungry when mom's away?
Yeah, I wondered about that too, right? Because it seems to me like I have I have a friend of mine who's got a new baby, and that baby's hungry all the time. And I've raised sheep, and man, you got to nurse them all the time. And these babies get left alone for like 12 hours. So I bet they probably do get hungry, but then mom nurses them continuously all night for about 12 hours. So they're probably pretty full by the time she takes off, but I bet they're pretty hungry by the time she comes back. Because what we see is when the mom shows up again, those babies, they want to feed right away. So I bet they do probably get pretty hungry. 12 hours is a long time to go without food.
I get hungry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hungry right now, and I only had breakfast like a couple hours ago.
Those are great questions. This is Felfit's class. Do you guys have some questions and wonders that you'd like to ask Joshua?
Ooh, just cramped one of my toes. My legs are pretty beat up from hiking. Excuse me.
Okay, one of our questions was when you're collecting the hair samples, what kind of information do you get from a hair sample?
Awesome question. So the things we are looking for, because we're non-invasive, right? So we're not collaring cats. So if we had a cat in hand, we could do a little tissue biopsy, and that would get us our DNA data. We could pluck some hair off. That'd be great. We could draw blood. We could do whatever. But because we're not doing that, we have to follow them around, find these bed sites, kill sites. We're looking for latrines, and we're picking up hair, and we're picking up scat, which is, you know, the fancy word for poo. And from those two things, we can get the DNA of that cat. And so when I send it off to the laboratory, first I get a report that tells us how many of those things are cougar. And sometimes the DNA is not even good enough to tell us that. But if the DNA is really good, it'll tell us if it's a male or a female, and it'll tell us what individual it is and how they are related to other individuals. So that's what we really want. I want to know the individual, and I want to know relatedness. And so that's what we're going to get from the hair and the scat samples, ideally. Then we can build family trees, and we can see how the whole population works.
Okay, Shinwei, did you want to ask your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
If there were like a lot of other mountain lions, would they have to live in the more rocky dens, or would they still live out in the open?
So what we see is that in our study area, there are multiple females, adult females, and their territories overlap, and they tolerate each other really well and actually share food resources. So if one of them kills an elk, others from that study area might show up and they might share it. So they've got a pretty good relationship going. So when they have babies, those females don't bother each other's babies. And those babies will also show up on kill sites, sometimes with those other mothers. And we've even had multiple moms and babies sharing den sites when the den is large enough or the food resource is large enough, and they're all there together. And we've even had moms adopt other moms' babies. So that happens too. So they seem to be pretty cool with each other. So it's not really a threat. What is a threat is if we have multiple females, and then you got one male who's the territorial male who kind of like keeps charge over a given area and keeps other males out. But if another male comes in and he meets kittens that are not his kittens, he will kill those kittens. So we have had that happen too. So the male who's the territorial male and the dad to the various kittens around tries to keep those other males away, so that his babies grow up and have more babies and nobody kills his babies.
Okay, and we have one last quick question. Anna, you want to ask yours?
What is a typical mountain lion's territory?
Yeah, usually like 100 square kilometers ish, something like that. So like you're looking at like 100 football fields, give or take, something like that. Well, I guess that's actually an acre. So let me rephrase that. 100 square kilometers is quite a lot bigger than that. But the ranch is 16,000 acres and we are 64 square kilometers. So probably about double that. So maybe 30-ish thousand acres. So how about 30,000 football fields is probably about the size of territory.
That's great. All right, Mrs. Hart's class, do you guys have any questions, research questions or wonders for Joshua?
And I should say too that territory size depends on food availability. So in the desert Southwest, territories will be a lot bigger because there's less food. But up here, they tend to be about the size I'm talking about.
All right, awesome. We do have another question, which is a little bit repetitious perhaps, but be great to listen again.
Hi, what would happen if like, what would you guys do if the mom were to like not come back?
Oh boy, that puts you in a real bind. Because like as a researcher, you're like, oh, it's science and I don't want to get involved and I shouldn't mess with these things and we should just let it all be. We had a kitten get abandoned at a den for a while and we didn't know it happened. We just ended up catching it on video and the mom did come back, thankfully, so that kitten survived. It would be a thing where like if we found that the kittens were abandoned and we knew that mom was dead and we were sure she wasn't coming back, then those kittens, we could potentially like box them up and take them off to a wildlife rehabilitation center. And they'd probably at that point be nursed at a rehabilitation center. Often those kind of orphan kittens end up going to zoos or things like that. So that might be something that we would do rather than just leave them to die, because I'd feel pretty awful just like leaving the kittens to die. I feel kind of invested in them at this point. They're absolutely adorable and I really want them to live. And I know I'm like not supposed to get really attached as a researcher, but it happens.
Awesome, thank you.
Oh, that's so great. Okay, so there's one other piece that you're learning about. You've discovered that they're not necessarily in rocky dens, that they're under trees on MPG Ranch in these really duff-filled, pine needle-filled areas.
Yeah, they're places like if you wanted to take a nap, like prime spot.
Yeah, places that are really good. But you're also learning that it's not just one den site, that
Yeah.
they're moving around. It's not just there's a rocky crag or one tree that they're under until they're big. You're finding that it's actually a lot of different places.
Yeah, and this is one we're still thinking about this one because we know that our influence in this equation makes the mom move. And so what you're seeing here is this is the mom and this is her eating an elk. So about 1.5 miles from her den, actually closer now because she moved her den closer. This is what she's snacking on. So she's, doing pretty good. But we know that if we find the den and put up cameras, she moves the den more frequently. But she moves the den anyway, just maybe a little less frequently. And we're trying to figure that out. And we're like, okay, well, how much of it is our influence? How much of it is her doing this anyhow? Why would she do that? What is the benefit to her moving the den? And then we're trying to answer those questions.
So one of the things that you're looking at right now,
And it's not like she moves them far. They're like 100 yards at a go.
is mom eating an elk. And so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if any of you have ever rolled in a dead animal, or if any of you have had your dog roll in a dead animal and then come home. They don't smell great, right? They're like, you notice that. And you probably want to take a bath or bathe your dog or whatever. So scent will accumulate. So if mom is tucked up on this elk and she's eating and feeding, she's gonna smell like a mountain lion anyway, but she's also going to smell a lot like this elk, and her scent is going to move across the landscape, and her tracks and her trails and her bed sites and her den sites, they're going to accumulate scent. And other predators out there who might want to make a meal out of her babies, they really navigate the landscape based on scent. So coyotes and foxes, they're really going to find stuff based on scent as they're moving around looking for a meal. So it would make sense that
Well,
maybe
if
she's going to move them.
If she smells like a dead elk,
Mhm.
and that coyote would like to eat that dead elk too, and
Yeah.
follows that scent trail,
Yeah.
I think that it's a good hypothesis that you've got, a good working hypothesis.
Yeah.
So there's another reason, another hypothesis that you're working with right now. And let me pull this one up. This right here is what?
So this is a quick little map, and you can see on one side we've got the kill site, and on the other side we've got one of her dens, and she's moved it closer now. So she's like over there now. But she uses similar paths pretty frequently, and this is a picture from Google Earth, right? So this is summertime landscape. Right now it's covered in snow, and some of that snow is really deep and a colossal pain in the butt to hike through. So if you are going for a hike, would you rather walk on an established trail, or would you rather break trail through deep snow?
Thumbs up if you'd like to walk down a trail. Thumbs down if you'd like to break snow. What do you think? Oh, so there's a lot of adventure.
Yeah, well, good to be adventurous. We end up breaking trail all the time following these cats around, and let me tell you, it is exhausting. So if I can follow an elk path or an established trail or something where the snow is packed down and I'll actually float on it, which doesn't always happen, it saves me so much energy and it saves me a lot of calories. And so what we find is then the cats use similar paths, the cats use the elk paths, and the coyotes use the cat paths, and everybody starts using the same paths. And those paths could also lead an animal to her den.
So the hypothesis is she's moving den sites so that those really established trails are not going to lead other predators to her babies.
Right.
Interesting. So those are all research questions that Joshua has right now.
And this is like, we have a lot of questions because we're just finding all of this stuff and we're trying to answer them as best we can.
It is so good. So
We might be right. We might not be right. We're trying to figure it out.
Almost out of time. If you'd like to have any other questions or name recommendations,
Yeah, you can send them in.
send me an email. Your teachers all have my email address, and I will pass those on to Joshua, and we will answer those questions for you, and we'll start a big list of potential names that we might name these cubs at some point. All right, thank you guys so much. We really enjoyed having you, and we hope to see you again soon.